64 Tacos Podcasts presents Is This Song Good? This is episode 25, Giant Drag, Wicked Game.
Welcome back to another episode of Is This Song Good? A 64 Tacos podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the song Wicked Game by Chris Isaacs and the cover version of it by Giant Drag. This is one of those songs from the late 80s again, right? That I absolutely love. And his voice is just amazing. But then, and I don't even know how I came across the Giant Drag version of it, but they basically took it and made it a 90s light grunge song. And it's a really neat interpretation of the song. It kind of follows the same basic formula of the song, but they take all of the romance out of it and make it more despair. And I thought it was a really neat twist on it. What did you guys think?
Well, I've never really liked the Wicked Game song personally. It was something, I think it was late 80s, early 90s. If I was reading things correctly, it sounded like it wasn't very popular when it first came out, but then I think maybe like a David Lynch movie or something like that sort of revitalized it in the early 90s. I don't know, it's just something about like the sort of country, easy listening thing. It just never really did it for me. It just felt kind of like, emotional heartbreak, cornball type of stuff. But in listening, deeper for this, I did really like the bass line of it and the guitar riff, like right after the chorus, dee doo dee doo dee doo doo. I really enjoyed those parts of it. It was definitely ripe for some sort of cover that takes it in a new direction, and I think there are a lot of covers of it because
that
of that.
Surprise me.
And so listening to this one, I was surprised that I was like, okay, I can actually get behind this. But then actually, listening a little bit deeper, it took the core of the song and it kind of amped it up and gave it kind of like the rock crunch and stuff. But I don't know, to me, it sort of felt like it was like Avril Lavigne recording in her garage or something. I mean, it was missing kind of like the production quality, and I've never heard of Giant Drag, so I don't really know where they are on the spectrum. Like maybe they're kind of really a small indie band and this is sort of the best they could do. But, I thought it was neat how they kind of tried to add the guitar.
We know how you hate small indie bands.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, some of them can really do amazing things with very, very limited budgets and stuff. But the guitar solos were, I don't know. It was like they were trying to solo, but it just kind of ended up being noise, and, but I do really like Chris Isaac singing. And I think that was better in the first one and then, in the original, and then, Giant Drag, Annie Hardy, I think was her name. She does a fine job singing, it really does. It kind of, it does what it needs to do for the song. But while I was listening to it, I was kind of like, could I have Chris Isaac singing with this version of the music,
Yeah, that would have been ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember the song very well from it being played a lot on MTV when I was a kid. In the 90s, probably, right after it became popular. And it's, it's funny. I've always liked this song a lot. And you mentioned, Zach, that it's kind of cornball. And I'm like, I've never thought of it that way, but you're probably right. It is, it is a little corny, I guess, but it's sometimes these songs get in your head when you're young enough to not know any better. And it never really feels that way to you, even if you could argue that it's possibly true. It's very Elvis ish, with his sort of like vocal mannerisms, and of course, his look, of course, as well. But I love the atmosphere of the original song, of the sort of like, lonesome, it is a little country, and I've always thought that it was just really moody and effective. It was interesting to hear sort of like like an extra crunchy version without all the atmosphere. But I do feel like you lose a bit when you don't have the atmosphere. Um, it's one of those songs that was recorded in the late 80s, which makes you think, wow, this should sound really dated, but it doesn't sound at all dated to me. It's just really immaculate production on it, the guitar tone and everything else. Um, and it passes the Dave test of sounding very different from the original, which is probably good, because I mean, can you imagine hearing somebody else like do an exact copy
Try to
of
croon.
Chris Isaak?
Right.
Like that, what would be the point? Because the song is mostly about atmosphere, and so if you're just mimicking the atmosphere, I don't know. So I think that's all. That's all. It's fine that it's different. In fact, it's kind of good that it's different. And I did find one other thing that was interesting, and that was that the guitar riff is so iconic that they felt obligated to put a very, very similar version in, so that you recognize the song, even though like the guitars for the rest of the song really aren't that similar to the original. But they're like, oh, we got to put that lick in, like that is the song basically, I find it interesting and different, and I wouldn't turn it off if it came on for sure. But I would definitely say that it's missing a bit of what made the original really enjoyable for me.
That's fair. I mean, you take Chris Isaak out of the equation, and it's definitely a different song. Nobody's gonna sing it like he sings it. I just loved how and I think it's what Zach, you got the most out of it, is how they took the guitar and just they dirtied it up. While keeping that same lick. And that was really fun for me. I thought that made it a neat twist. I don't think I like it better than the original. I think the Chris Isaak's version is just about perfect, but it was a neat divergence from it.
Yeah, I don't think you can do that song any better than it was done originally. If your goal is for it to sound like that, how weird is it that Chris Isaak was making a song that sounded like that in 1989, and then it became really popular? It just doesn't. I don't know. It's very strange to me that song exists, sounds the way it does, and that, man, like I mentioned the production already, but yeah, like the drums with the brushes and like the bass playing, it just sounds so good. It just feels like a master class on like production, and like simple, but everything sounds perfect. It's just a great recording. Whether you like the what they're trying to do or not, they really nailed what they were trying to do, and the fact that it still sounds good, 30 plus years later, I think it's a testament to that for sure.
So the funny thing is, it came out in June 1989, and it was released as a single, but it did not become a hit at that time. It wasn't until later in 1990 when David Lynch used it in Wild at Heart that it actually took off, and people found it and liked it. So it for some reason, just on its own, it was not iconic enough to really push through, but using it in that movie or something, I guess, was what really got people onto it. I don't know. I mean,
yeah, it's weird how the music business works that way, where you can have this amazing song like Aerosmith's "Dream On" was not a hit until after their second album came out, and people were actually paying attention to Aerosmith, and people came back to "Dream On," which is now their mega hit. They're the one song they have to play at all their concerts. It's just people don't get, if you don't get the right exposure on a song, it can just not do anything, despite the regardless of how good it is.
Yeah. Well, and that I didn't think that David Lynch movie was very popular either, but reading on Wikipedia, it looks like they commissioned a music video or something for it later on, and so maybe that was the trick. Like maybe the
Yeah.
original music video wasn't quite enough or something. I don't know, but yeah, it's strange how those things go.
Just needed a little bit of that Nick Cage stank on it, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah. I remember. I wasn't really aware at the time for sure that it was in Wild at Heart, but I remember reading about Wild at Heart, and it was at least, I don't know, maybe it's just it being a David Lynch movie, but when you're reading about it, when you don't know much about movies, you think, oh, that's one that, that's supposed to be good, in my head. But I do think it's interesting that, like you said, Dave, it's weird how sometimes songs like hit that in retrospect you think, oh, of course, it's such a great song, but it's so out of step with what was going on in 1989 and the way the industry worked. It had to get into a movie or something to get big, because I don't think Chris Isaak was particularly high in the consciousness of the average American or anything at the time. I mean, I'm not a big Chris Isaak follower, so I don't know, maybe he was big, but it's the only thing that you ever really heard about from him at the time, as I remember. But yeah, it just needs a break sometimes, and that's the way music is. Like sometimes you hear a song that you've heard before, but you hear it in a movie, and suddenly it has it sticks in your head, and it really catches on with you.
Yeah. So I looked up Kickball Records, which is the record company that Giant Drag was on, and it turns out it is owned by Avril Lavigne and recorded in her garage.
Perfect.
Yeah, well,
nailed it. Well, I hit it. I didn't know, but I hit it. Yeah.
All right. So what do you guys think? Which one do you like better?
I like the original better.
Yeah, me too. I love the dirty twist to the music, but Chris Isaak is irreplaceable in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the singing of Chris Isaak would probably push me in that direction a little bit more.
All right, well there you have it. Next week we're doing one of your songs, right, Dan?
Yeah, we're gonna do the very, very, very famous cover by Whitney Houston of "I Will Always Love You," the Dolly Parton song from '74, I think.
All right, we'll see you then.
I caught it on audio.